Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Help Is Here podcast, brought to you by the Beyond Compulsion Academy. Welcome back on the show, Mary. How are you doing today?
Doing fairly well. How are you, Tom?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, thank you. Played football this evening. We lost by 2 goals. It was a close one. It's quite a
Were you
cold
playing
day.
with your left foot again?
Oh, what? Sorry.
So were you playing with your left foot again? Sorry, I'm never gonna forget the
Oh,
shit talk of the guy. 'Cause, he'll probably listen to this podcast. Dissing
don't.
on him, shit talking you. Well, you should be dissed on for shit talking you.
Honestly, that was bad. That did I share that on the podcast?
What's that?
Have I shared that on the podcast, or did I just tell
I
you
don't
about
think
that?
so. That
I'm
he
gonna,
said,
I'm gonna
what, you
share it.
don't have a left, what did he say? What, you don't have a left foot?
Right, so basically, yeah, it was playing like a couple of weeks ago, and I remember I'd played like the first half, like most of the game, in quite a defensive mode, really. I was just quite tired, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna sort of take it easy tonight. But truth is, my energy came back, and I was like, right, you know what? I'm actually up for it. Let's go. Let's attack. So I kind of go and attack, sort of, yeah, quite far forward up the pitch. And to be honest, I played quite well and I scored a couple of really, really quite good goals on my right foot. And there was this defender, and he was getting pissed off because by this point we were like destroying the other team. And this defender goes to me. So I had another shot, and to be honest with you, this shot was absolutely terrible. It went literally so far away. But the defender said to me, "Oh, you have literally no left foot, do you?" And I was like, wait, what? What did this guy just say to me? Like in this casual game as well, because we're all friends at this football. But I didn't know
Yeah.
this guy. I didn't recognize him. And he did genuinely seem a bit pissed off. So I was like, right, I've got one mission for the next 10 minutes. And like this little childlike part of me just went and was like, okay, I'm gonna score my left foot. I don't care how, I'm gonna score my left foot. So then every time I got the ball, I was just trying to shift it onto my left and have shots. And I had two shots. The keeper saved both of them, good saves. And then it's like the last minute of the game, I get the ball, and oh my God, I think I'd say my speciality in football is probably like dribbling, like just keeping the ball tight to my feet and moving it around players quite quickly. So I move it around about two or three players, and I'm in a really like tight scenario. And it's a bit like a player called Dimitri Payet or maybe Eden Hazard, if anyone follows the Premier League over the last 10 years. But anyway, get the ball, and I know I'm kind of showing off a bit here, but yeah, just move on to my left foot, and it's genuinely the last kick of the game. I smash one into the top left corner, and then I go up to the guy and I go, "How's that for your left foot, mate?" And he wasn't too happy. But I didn't tell you this actually, but a few days later, he was asking for other people to play football that night, and I said to him, "Yeah, I'm around tonight. If 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 you need another player." And I think he replied to me and said something like, "All right, I'll let everyone know you got no left foot in advance."
Yeah.
I was like, fair play to the guy, fair play. He's still taking the piss out of me. But anyway, I appreciate. Oh God, it's gone very blurry. I'm just gonna change my camera slightly, but I appreciate a lot of people listening don't want to just hear me trying to show off about my skills at football, which I'm not actually very good at. And for my 11-a-side team, I'm on the bench like every week. So let's get into talking a bit about addiction recovery. And today I want to talk about junkie thinking again and junkie thinking across a range of addictions because I was at an event today, Mary, and it's very interesting because I was opening up, sharing about the work that we're doing together. It was like a business networking event, and a guy starts opening up about his addiction, and it was actually nicotine. And it's quite interesting because he said something which is literally in our program. He said he always gets to a point where maybe he's having a bad day, or maybe he's done well at work, or he's, gone to the gym or something like that. And he says, "Oh, you know what? I deserve it. I deserve to have, a smoke on this vape or whatever it is." So Mary, can you tell us a little bit about how that works? This junky thought of I deserve it, and how what happens is, the rational part of the mind's in control for a bit, and then it gives the power back to the addictive part of the mind with this junky thinking and that back and forth that can go on. It's in like phase two of our program, but can you just share a bit about that? Because I think it'll be quite helpful to our listeners.
You mean about I deserve it? That
Yeah.
particular junkie thinking? Well, the thing is that people are feeling deprived, right? Like they don't have a choice about it, that they're just willing it out and just have to stop doing it. So they're looking for a reason, you know. The reason being I deserve it because I've done all that, I've worked out, I've done all this other stuff. When, you know, in our class, I mean, that is classic junkie thinking. It's classic junkie thinking, and it's also classic glamorizing. I deserve it. I deserve to give into my addiction and relapse to nicotine hell. I mean, it makes no sense. But the thing is when you don't have that education and are able to identify that kind of thinking, you start for starters, you have all the feelings of deprivation because you feel like you don't have a choice. So you need to, you know, use a reason that you deserve it. And you don't understand that when you get into those into withdrawal, that's the kind of stuff that your mind will use to glamorize it to get you to give in. So it's like people talk about the glamorizing of comfort food, or when I engage in it in my addiction, it's comforting, you know, when yeah, you experience a little bit of temporary relief when you give in to an addiction. So you equate that to comfort when what you're really doing is stopping the discomfort of withdrawal. You know, but you got to get real clear on that. That's not education that people have. You know, they and they'll hear things like you deserve it. All it's common language now. It's like I was at a bar with my friend Tracy, and we were trying to decide if we wanted to have another margarita. It's the Matador, and they have these really interesting, different kinds of margaritas, right? And the guy comes up to us, and we're trying to decide between her and I if we have time to hang out longer. Should we have another margarita? And and the guy says to me, "Oh, you deserve it." I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? What do you know about me? I could be a serial killer. You don't know. Yeah, you deserve it. But like I say, it's totally common language now. You know, you deserve it. There was I know I'm going on and on about the you deserve it, but there was what was it? It was the Voice show. The it's
Yeah.
a competition, and John Legend. It was during the holidays. Yeah, the Voice is on right now. It's on during the holidays, and so John Legend has this song. He's singing this. It's "You Deserve It All," and I was just like, "Holy crap!" And they had this totally obese person dancing on the stage. Well, there were other people singing and dancing too, but they were like piling gifts on him, you know, and the song was "You Deserve It All." And it's just like that's the mentality now. So I am not surprised at all that this is junky thinking that this guy had at your event today. You know,
Yeah.
it's in all the advertising, and but it's actually not new either, you know. Now it's just pushed.
Mm.
And with normalizing addiction, you know, that's the kind of thing is really pushed where it was standard junkie thinking back 30 years ago when I did this class. It was "You Deserve It" was right out of Patricia's book, you know, so right out of the
Yes.
class.
It's
So yeah,
interesting because obviously what we teach is sort of getting people closer to the truth ultimately. And I think that truth can come out in different ways. But what we try and do is really enable people to think through the truth in the moments that matter most so they can change their neural pathways correctly and actually gain as permanent mental freedom as possible. And when it comes to you deserve it, there isn't really any truth there because, as you say, all you're doing is getting out of this discomfort very temporarily. So you deserve to get out of the temporary discomfort of being in an addiction, which is causing the discomfort in the first place. Like that's what's
right.
actually going on here, right? So
Yeah,
and it's choosing to engage which creates more of the discomfort because it's choosing to
yeah,
engage which leads to the desire. You know, this is so essential for people to understand that you wouldn't be addicted to porn if it's porn or whatever other addiction it is if you hadn't chosen to engage with porn in the past. Now, most people listening to this probably got hooked on porn in their, you know, teenage years or earlier for most people, right? Most people we work with, it's probably around 11, 12, but it can vary. But the point is, you've got hooked on something. You didn't choose to get hooked on that thing, but now every time you choose to engage with that compulsive behavior, say it's porn, you're just strengthening those addictive neural pathways. And so then it becomes a case of you either strengthen them or you weaken them. And it really is that black and white. And we can go into all these different things, but in the moments of compulsive desire, which you will have these moments where you really want to engage with porn. In those moments, you either strengthen or you weaken them. Now, that glamorization of it, you deserve it, it's just denying the reality of the fact that actually, yeah, you're just getting out of this discomfort temporarily. And then what we need to do is have a look at, for example, a remember letter or talk with someone for a bit of time. And we understand, like, wow, this, it really, really does mess up people's lives. And, as we were saying just before this call, the other day I was having a look at, sort of my script and
Yeah.
a couple of the parts of that script and just like thinking through how much porn addiction did mess up my life. And it's scary when you actually look into that and just imagine how your life could have been if you just weren't addicted to anything at all. It just would be absolutely, absolutely different completely.
I'm looking here, just pulled up any random client and the cost list, right? And you can use that. Okay, you deserve to waste time wanting the only endless resource I waste, excuse me, wasting the only endless resource I have by choosing a life on mindless and life-sucking immediate gratification. Okay, you deserve that, right? I deserve to drain my energy, leaving me constantly tired, mentally fatigued, and physically exhausted. I deserve to be disconnected from those I love most, my wife and kids. I deserve to be angry, impulsive, and short tempered, especially towards my kids. I deserve to be physically weak and sick. I deserve to have no motivation for anything. I deserve to feel ashamed, my social anxiety rising and making me anxious. I deserve to have diminished self confidence and, just I deserve to give up true inner happiness. This behavior steals my peace, joy, and sense of purpose. Okay, you can connect with your script to your rational mind. So, I mean, you don't have to go through I deserve it and then plug in those things over and over, see how ridiculous that is. And your mind's not going to go there anymore. Once you create these pathways, oh, yeah, I deserve to be completely miserable and destroy my life. But the thing is that if you're out in the world and that kind of thinking is just being validated left and right, rather than you have a script that you've compiled that you can use to change the pathways to counteract that kind of thinking, it's tough because literally right now we're in a major state of glamorizing addiction on
Mm.
every level.
I
It's
think
yeah,
what it all comes down to, I believe, is just that temporary versus long-term mindset. And I suppose with instant gratification, as such as they call it, which is usually just going to be addiction, right? But let's call it instant gratification for a minute, and we're talking about maybe social media, and maybe that's just another podcast episode on its own, right? This concept of instant gratification, like what does that actually mean? Because usually that's just getting out of the temporary discomfort of
right,
porn
because
anyway, right?
instant gratification doesn't end with the instant gratification. Instant gratification ends with more desire to engage in the behavior and then ends the list that I just read.
Mm,
That it's just instant gratification. It's like, oh, I'm just going to have this instant gratification and then I'm done. No, it's not how it works.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
Exactly. Because what I was going to say is like what a lot of it does come down to is just weighing up short term versus long term. And I almost feel like a lot of people nowadays, yeah, just getting kind of almost brainwashed into believing that everything needs to be short term, instant gratification as such. But as we're saying, all it is you're getting out of this discomfort which is temporary, and there's not actually anything there. Like there's not actually any real benefit, and long term and quite, kind of short term as well for most people, you are just gonna have this horrible list. And like I can read out my list as well. We've got things like this is me for like porn, but I guess it applies to any compulsive behavior. A lot of it is like, yeah, feeling physically weak, drained, mentally exhausted and tired, disconnected and alone. I'd spend so many days not wanting to socialize with anyone because I just relapsed. Like I just gone and engaged with porn. So I just wouldn't want to go out of my house and connect. I just had no desire for socialization, having a busy mind and feeling distracted, like just constantly thinking about this thing. And I remember looking at people and I'd be talking with them and I'd almost feel like on some level they knew that I just looked at sexual content and it's like they could kind of
Yeah.
see through my brain. And there was this, have you ever experienced that with other clients and in other addictions, Mary?
Yeah, I think so. I think because people get so caught up in their minds, they get a little paranoid, you
Mm,
know, just like thinking that people know what I'm doing, it's I think with porn, I mean, it's hard to tell, but we've heard it from a lot of the guys that they feel real kind of social anxiety or anxious or feeling like people know what they're
mm,
doing.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I haven't experienced that as much with other addictions as with porn, that people know what they're doing because other addictions, people do know what they're doing. I mean, if you're 300-400 pounds, people know, that's
Yeah.
not rocket science. Or when you're a smoker, I mean, good grief, it just reeks. I can tell a smoker just by looking at their face.
Mm, mm,
It's or listening to their voice or whatever. And alcoholics have a certain sort of look too.
yeah.
So, but
That's so
porn, I
interesting.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. What were
Because
you gonna
yeah, I mean, I was going to carry on reading out option, like my option A as such, but I don't really need to go into the rest of it. But yeah, that made me think about how with porn, I think because the consequences are hidden, it can arguably be harder to stop this behavior because more junky thinking comes up, especially if, you don't have the right tools. More junky thinking can come up around, I can get away with this and no one's gonna know. That is the sort of junky thinking I would have in the past. It's like, it doesn't really matter. I remember, in fact, if I didn't have plans for like 2 or 3 days, I would be like, okay, I can engage in this behavior, and then maybe by the seventh day of NoFap, I'll be out at like a networking event or some shit. And because I'll have all my powers like back, like I'll have all this energy back,
yeah.
I'll be good to go. I'll have my confidence back after 7 days, which
Yeah.
obviously just denies the reality of addiction entirely.
Well,
But
that's
yeah,
interesting you say that because I was just going to pull my book out here. Nobody would know is straight out of my book, Beyond Food
mm,
Compulsion, it was in Patricia's book, ending your love-hate relationship with nicotine. Nobody would know implies that you're only going to do it once, right?
mm,
It's in the category of denying the reality of addiction, which is what you just said, right? So nobody would know is denying the reality of addiction because the truth is if you deny the reality of addiction and engage, you're going to be back in the addiction, and then everybody's going to know. And the thing is even like if you can hide it, you can't hide yourself from the consequences.
mm.
It's like, oh, here I'm feeling really totally horrible. I'm just going to go hide from myself. It's like, what does that look like? So, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. It's just
exactly.
more
And
junky thinking. Junky thinking, trying to get you to engage. It's all the junky mind cares about, wants to go down this pathway.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing that obviously we spoke about quite a few times before, but the consequences remain the same. Whether you've got an amazing job, you've got an amazing relationship, you got an amazing family, you could be the most successful person in the world. I can guarantee the consequences of being in a porn addiction will remain the same, whether you're
Mhm.
successful or seemingly unsuccessful. If you've got your life put together in all these different areas and you're still in a porn addiction, you're still going to be feeling pretty awful overall on some level. You know, you're going to be thinking about it all the time. You're going to feel pretty drained. You're going to be trying to
And
stop
then
this
then
behavior.
it's going to bleed into all the other aspects of your life. I mean, you may be doing okay financially, you might be doing okay if having a relationship or whatever, but addiction just has a way of bleeding in. It seeps in because, like this client that I just read that says he's just angry all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, the thing is when you have an addiction and you don't know how to deal with it, you don't know how to get free of it, and you're in your mind all the time, living in conflict. You're living in conflict all the time, you're going to be pissed off, I
Mm.
mean, and it's going to come out. It's going to come out in relationships with anybody and everybody. You're just going to be way less patient, you're going to be way less understanding. You're going to be not a very good listener. There's just so many ways that it just bleeds into your life,
Yeah.
living in that conflict all the time, yeah, it's not a
Yeah.
good place.
You know what's really interesting about that as well is that there's two things I want to mention. So the first thing is that the junkie thinking can be because my life isn't that bad or my life is good, this problem
Yeah,
isn't that much of a problem, which is obviously bullshit. And then the
yeah,
second thing is often people think that the symptoms of porn addiction have nothing to do with porn addiction. So what I mean by that is people who maybe are struggling with discipline, procrastinating, not really pursuing the business or the life that they want. Maybe they do have social anxiety. Maybe they're, yeah, just feeling like a bit of a failure in life. Like if you're in that camp, I can almost guarantee the biggest reason that you have all those feelings is due to your addiction. But what people are going to do is try, like, because I've done it, and we talk to clients all the time who have done this as well, is they try get into self-improvement or they have therapy or
yeah,
they try all these different
yeah.
things. But the root cause of all this horrible like shit going on in their life is ultimately the addiction. Now, once you get clear on the addiction, you feel in control of yourself, you're confident, you know what you're doing moment by moment. I can guarantee all those problems are going to fade away and they're going to be replaced with great, great things. But yeah, Mary, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, it just goes to show that it's the addiction talking because it's like, my life sucks, therefore I might as well use the porn. That or my life is great, therefore it's okay if I use the porn. I mean, if your life
Yeah,
sucks or if your life's great, the addictive part of the mind's going to use either one against you, right?
yeah,
Because all it wants is for you to act on the desire because the neural pathway is pulling it that direction.
yeah.
So yeah, it just I love it when junkie thinking bites its own self in the ass. Like this one, I'll just I'll just stop again. Okay, that's a really common junkie thought. I'll just
Mm,
stop again. Well, wait a minute. If you look at that junkie thought rationally, if going back to your addiction is such a great idea, why are you already planning on stopping again? Right? It's like, because
mm,
it's going to be shit. So, yeah, it's just junkie thinking is interesting. And like you were saying earlier, that sometimes you have junkie thoughts and you just see them as interesting and write them down and you end up laughing
yeah,
because it's just like, oh, yeah, this is, the addictive part of the mind is going to do what the addictive part of the mind does. It's nothing to be afraid of. Once you have the tool to deal with every thought or desire that comes up, it's like you can kind of look at it as comedy sometimes. It's like because the more that you counteract it with your script, the more desperate it becomes, and then it can be actually humorous. So it's like,
yeah,
yeah, right.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And as we always say, the scripts which we teach will deal with literally any junkie thought at all. Very, very common thing I hear from people is, will, along the lines of like, will having a script work for me? Or like, will this program work for me? Something like that. Because almost everyone we work with has tried to stop engaging in their addiction for like 10, 20 years minimum, right? So most
Yeah.
people feel like there's something wrong with them. But when we really break it down, and for me personally, over the last 12 months, I'm fortunate enough to have worked with quite a lot of clients now and heard junky thoughts from so many different people all around the world, really. And it's really helped me understand that, oh yeah, this problem is basically the same for everyone. Like the
Yeah.
junky thoughts may be slightly different, but
Yeah.
overall it is just how addiction works. And I
Yeah.
think for me as well, we've had quite a few chats about like how we share the method with people. And sometimes I thought, oh, we need to really personalize it just for pornography, like the actual first three phases of the program. I've been like, yeah, we maybe need to personalize it for porn. But I watched the first three phases again last week and I was like, you know what? This could literally be a program just for porn because it's literally talking about all the things that you need to stop porn. So
Yeah.
what's been really freeing for me and liberating and helped me kind of overcome even more feelings of shame personally has definitely been understanding that actually this is addiction. This is compulsive desire. These are addictive neural pathways. And it applies for nicotine, it applies for food, alcohol, social media, relationships, all these different areas. The junky thoughts that I hear from people day in, day out, like at this networking event today, it's all basically the same stuff. You
Yes.
someone with a nicotine addiction telling me today, oh yeah, what happens is after a few days, I feel like I deserve it. And I'm like, okay, well, I've heard that for 100 times from other people with a porn addiction.
Right.
The same
Right.
sort of
Exactly.
thoughts, because the
Yeah.
human brain isn't that different. I had a really interesting conversation with a guy last week, and he was saying that overall, it doesn't really matter where you live. He thinks fundamentally humans are actually a lot more similar than we give ourselves credit for. And I think the more I talk to loads of different people, I kind of agree. I think we have different thoughts that change and evolve, and we have different backgrounds, and they become, our perception of the world and different things like that. But overall, like at the root core, I think our brains are built in sort of similar ways. And I know we have like neurodivergence and people whose brains obviously work differently, but there's so many similarities. And I think when it comes to addiction in particular, there's just so many similarities. Like most junky thoughts I've heard, I've had before myself. And I'm just like, yep, I had that thought. I know what you're on about there. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's so true. And like the neurodivergent, is that what's called?
Mm,
Neurodivergent, there's so much of that now, there's I mean, everywhere I turn, I see or hear about someone who struggles with those the neurodivergent, meaning how they think, but
mm,
it's kind of evolved into that. And I think a lot of that is due to the mistreatment of addiction or of compulsion, and I just really feel like that they're trying to pound in a nail with a noodle. It's like they're underestimating addiction and thinking people can just think about it by doing something else. And if you're in an addiction, it's we have such an epidemic of ADHD, right? If you're in an addiction and you can't get out of it, you don't have a way to get out of it and get to peace of mind. I mean, literally everybody we work with, that's the number one thing they want. And all the people I've worked with and all the other addictions, well, they want peace of mind. When you're in an addiction, you want to do it and you want to stop and you can't find a way out, of course you're going to have attention deficit because your mind is so full of this stuff. How can you focus on anything else? I mean, I know there's people that have ADHD that don't have addictions, but now we have an ADHD epidemic. It's totally epidemic. And I thought about what you were saying about, making porn specific videos and everything like that. Well, I used to think, when I wrote Beyond Food Compulsion, I thought, oh, I need to write Beyond Gambling Compulsion. I need to write Beyond Nicotine Compulsion. I need to write. And then I thought, you know what? Like you were saying, that it's all so similar that just got to be beyond compulsion. And that's why my video series is all inclusive. Doesn't matter what addiction you have, you can apply the techniques to any addiction, any compulsive behavior, because it's so similar. It's
mm.
addictive neural pathways, and yeah. So I don't know how I got off on that, but
But I'll tell you what I see a lot as well is that people do think that their problem is to do with sexuality and sexual
Mhm.
desires.
Yep.
And there's things like, yeah, as we spoke about before, you got like semen retention, you got no nut November, you got no fap, you got kind of the whole masculinity world nowadays and testosterone. So you got all of this stuff going on, and like just sexual desires in general is a huge topic. There's all kinds of different theories behind why people have certain fetishes and different sexual
Yeah.
tastes, and you can get into the psychology on all of that. And yeah, it might be very, very interesting. And you might understand a few things slightly better. But what I'd say to anyone is like, at the end of the day, what I care about is stopping people from doing behaviors that ultimately they don't want to do and having a very
Right.
practical tool to stop those
Yeah.
behaviors.
Helping them. If they want to, if they have consequences, they want to stop and they are struggling to do so, that's where we can step in. And, I think that people can get the idea like we're anti-addiction, no. If you have an addiction or whatever you want, well, it probably wouldn't even be an addiction. If you're engaging in a behavior a whole bunch and you don't want to stop, you don't have any negative consequences, go for it. Have at it, have a good time. When people are struggling to stop and they can't stop, that's where we come in. We're not trying to push anybody into doing anything they don't want to do. You know what I mean? It's like if you're good with your behaviors, keep doing them.
Mm,
As long as you're not hurting anybody else, do what you want to do.
yeah, yeah. I
Stay in
think,
your house and do pornography for the rest of your life. Whatever, eat your,
yeah,
adhere to your couch because all you do is sit there and eat. Whatever, do it. If you have a problem and you want to stop and you can't, that's where help is here. That's where we can
yeah,
step
yeah,
in, help people that want help. If they don't want help,
exactly.
then good. Do what you want to do.
Yeah. And I think you can explore that world of, like sexuality and all these different things and
Mhm.
keep that completely separate from being in control of yourself moment by moment with all sort of behaviors. Literally every single action that you have, you can be in control of moment by moment. But when I
Yeah.
say that, we've probably spoke about this before again, but I can imagine it's people thinking that that means they can't do any behaviors which have been deemed or judged as unhealthy or bad by society. And this kind of concept of the bad habit and like books like Atomic Habits, I think have done people a big disservice because essentially what we have now is a huge amount of judgment for behaviors like eating food that is high in sugar or high in fat. We have a huge amount of judgment for behaviors like
Oh,
looking at porn, like
sure.
playing video games, like I don't know, scrolling social media, Netflix, all of these things, like they have negative connotations attached to them due to the judgments that people have put
Yeah.
on them. And so now people have unreasonable relationships with them. But actually, for a lot of these behaviors, it is possible to have a reasonable behavior. But just final point I'll make on that is there's still going to be some things where, in my opinion anyway, like porn or drugs, like hard drugs in particular, maybe like heroin or whatever, it's like, okay, well, really, can you develop a healthy relationship with that? Maybe not, but there's a lot of things that you can
Good
develop healthy
point.
relationships with.
Yeah. And I feel like, people, they are always wanting to give a reason for what they're doing. Again, like with food, it's like you can't have somebody just eat a donut or what you're saying, like sugary, whatever, without telling you why they're doing it.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm doing this because I had a bad day or whatever, it's just like, I don't know how we've really gotten to that place where people, they always want to justify, you know, well, and in doing that and getting to that place, I think that's where they can develop a compulsive relationship as well, because they feel like they can't have a donut without having a really good, reason or some crisis that they had in their life
Mm.
that justifies this donut. I mean, I just discovered Kit Kats are my favorite candy bars, right? They
Mm.
make Kit Kat ice cream now. I don't
Yeah.
usually eat ice cream because I think it kind of bothers my stomach a little bit, but I'm like, Kit Kat ice cream, I'm gonna check this out, you know? So
Mm.
yeah. But guess what? I didn't go through the checkout and tell the checker I'm buying this ice cream because it's just like, but everyone wants to offer up, reasons that they're, acting in a certain way, especially with food, and with other addictions as well. It's like, it's well, like, or like when we went through COVID, oh my God, that was the thing, they called it the COVID 15, like everybody gained 15 pounds. I didn't gain 15 pounds during COVID. Did you? I'm
No.
like, no, I don't have a food compulsion. So,
Yeah.
but it was the reason,
Mm.
that everybody was using all these things to make themselves feel better in the middle of this crisis. Now
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure that everyone's using the election results here in the US as a reason, I said
Mm.
that before, it makes me want to do some heroin, but it's yeah, it's interesting the trajectory of things and where it's got us, but we can change that trajectory, we can do
Hopefully.
it, as long
Yeah.
as enough people are listening, because they're going to keep experiencing negative consequences regardless if the whole entire world is going addiction, yeah, do it, it's normal, it's great, you deserve it, right?
Mm.
It's They're still going to be suffering the consequences of being stuck in an addiction. So we're here we're here to help for those people that are sick of it, don't want to be stuck in an addiction anymore.
Absolutely. All right, so we've been talking quite a little while now, so hopefully this has been interesting to anyone listening. Help is here. It is 100% possible to change these addictive neural pathways. And if you do want to get started on all of that, then feel free to book in a free call with me. I'll leave a link in the description and we can jump on a call soon. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.
Thank you.